Enigma the Mystic Illusionist is truly an enigma. This is my Clash build for Enigma, and I'm very happy to share it all with you. We're going to go over her strategy and any of her kind of special abilities in this young format. Let's check it out. Welcome on in, Dragon Folk. It is such a pleasure to have you here in the Dragon's Lair with me. Today we are looking over none other than Enigma, the last of the 3 Part the Mistveil heroes to enter the Clash format. We're going to go over some deck ideas and some techs that we have, and then kind of play a little game and check out some strategy and go over what exactly the deck is supposed to do and how it functions in the best of its own way. So let's go ahead and take a look into Enigma the Mystic Illusionist. Now, a lot of people are looking at the majestic cards that Enigma has, Manifestations of Mirakai and Restless Coalescence, all of these cards being really, really powerful. And her rares are just kind of okay. Again, we run into a situation where the sacred art for Enigma is actually not available here with us in Clash because it is not a specialization. So we just have to utilize what we have and kind of make our ward system work. I am using the deck list that was actually provided to me from somebody in our Clash Discord. There's a lot of awesome Clash builds located in that Discord. You can find a link to that in the description below, but I'm going over it because after playing it, I think it is very well suited to a lot of things, and it does exactly what I want a deck to do in Clash, which is be thematic. I want it to be able to do the thing that the hero wants it to do without kind of straying super far off into the is this jank or is this not jank situation. Because with Cosmo, I originally was running the Reality Refractor, which is a pretty powerful card, but you spend a lot of time saving one aura and then kind of never worrying about anything else. But Cosmo allows us to really utilize that low-cost resource for high-power attack kind of deal. And you'll see that as we go over the deck itself. But first, let's talk about Enigma's ability. So for those of you who don't know what Enigma does, she has the ability of your first Spectral Shield. Attack each turn costs 1 less to activate. So if you do have a Spectral Shield and you have Cosmo, that means that your Spectral Shield is only going to be, your first Spectral Shield is going to be free to attack with. And if it's got a +1 counter on it, it's going to get go again. And that's very important because her Chi ability allows her to make a Spectral Shield token with the +1 counter on it. This is, and a very interesting concept in this matter, this is the first time we have seen an Illusionist be able to technically get a end game weapon if it goes to fatigue. Normally with Dromai and with Prism, once you run out of things to attack with in your deck, you don't have a weapon to really attack with, and that's kind of unfortunate. But in this scenario, if you have a decent amount of Chi in your deck, you can always go ahead and pitch Chi, make a Spectral Shield for +1, and then you get to come in, you get to attack for 2 go again for free, and you get to have Ward 1, which means it protects 1 part of your life total. So it's a very interesting endgame scenario, but you don't really want to go to fatigue. That's going a little too far. There may be some fatigue builds out there. I'm not too sure though. So moving into the equipment again, we do have Cosmo. This allows us to attack with our ward auras, and they get the attack value of them is based off of their ward value, and then also any +1 counters on top of it. If they have a +1 counter on it, it gets go again. Our main list here is going to be our Headpiece of Truths Retold. This allows us to recur any auras from the grave, and it also wards 1 at instant speed, so super good there. Uphold Tradition is the best arm piece for her personally. It allows her to get a +1 counter onto an aura at instant speed, so if your opponent thinks that they aren't going to be able to, you're not going to be able to continue your chain because it doesn't have a +1 counter on it, you can just pop Uphold Tradition to give it a +1 counter and have it continue on through the chain. Very, very powerful, very well utilized, especially in these games. Then, of course, for a chess piece, we have Koi Blessed Kimono, which is just if you have 1 life left, You can, at the beginning of your turn, you can flip it up, destroy it, and then go find an inner chi in your deck. This is going to, again, be a nice little end game scenario, and it's also going to allow you to get the blue and the chi when you need it. Skywalker Kikoi is simply just a prevent damage. In some situations, you might want to possibly play something along the lines of Mage Master's Boots, which isn't a bad idea either. But keeping these cloaked, a lot of people already kind of know what they do, because it's either these ones or it's going to be the Aqua Lapse. Aqua Lapse is not a bad choice either, because it allows you to give Go Again to another, to an attack that you have without it needing to have a +1 counter on it or anything of the sort. So this build does run the Skywalker Kikoi, although I personally think I'd rather play the Aqua Lapse or even play Mage Master's Boots, because being able to do more than one thing on your turn certainly does feel good. So let's get into the main deck. Obviously, we are running the Astral Etchings. Astral Etchings is pretty much like the power card. Think of this like an attack reaction, because you're usually going to have a Spectral Shield on the board, and when you do, you can go ahead and play this at instant speed because you have a Spectral Shield, and you get +3 counters onto a target aura you control with Ward. This blue one only gives +1, but even still, these turn on the Go Again mechanic. So if you're coming in simply with a Haze Shelter for 4 Ward, and your opponent goes, well, they're not going to have any way to give it Go Again, so I don't need to worry about blocking everything here. You can then play one of these Astral Etchings if you have a Spectral Shield, give it Go Again because it gets counters, and then you get to come in and attack with something else as well. So very nice. Moving in to Battlefront Bastion, this is just one of the poppers in the deck, as well as being able to prevent a decent amount of stuff. This is actually super great for the Kodachi builds or anything that's got small little one attack weapons or anything of the sort, any of the daggers from assassins or the Kodachis from ninjas. It's very nice because you're able to block out, and then you have +1 to a prevention effect on your next attack, or on their next attack. So you get to prevent 1 more damage, which means you can come in with a piece of armor instead and not have to worry about using an additional card from hand. And it's a popper for 7. It does what it's supposed to do. Fate Foreseen, this is a fairly defensive deck, so having the D-Reacts in here is going to make sense. You do have Fate Foreseen and Sink Below, as well as a blue Unmovable, so keep those in mind. Haze Shelter is one of your more powerful Ward cards, because if you did pitch a blue, essentially if there is a blue in your pitch zone, right, this will have Ward 4. But if there isn't, it's got Ward 1. So these are turns in which if you are looking to have it Ward for 4, you're going to want to make sure that you're able to play something at instant speed on your opponent's turn, pitch a blue, and then this will have Ward 4 on top of you being able to play any other instance. Phantasmal Haze, it's a fantastic 3 for 8 attack, and it's got Phantasm. The important part here is that if it's destroyed by a popper, then you get a Spectral Shield. So it's got value there in the sense where if they give you a card, you get to go ahead and technically get an attack back. So very nice. Also, it's 8. So in decks that don't have poppers, which I'd imagine every deck should run poppers, but in some decks that don't, 8 damage is a lot to deal with. Spectral Manifestations, incredibly powerful, because this is simply just a play this, you create a Spectral Shield. If you have no other Illusionist auras, also you get 3 +1 counters on it. So that means that you can for 2 attack for 4 Go Again, because your first Spectral Shield is free, essentially. So it's a nice 4 Go Again, and then you get to come in with whatever other Ward stuff you want to put onto the board. Waning Vengeance is a great defensive card to have. It's going to be able to go ahead and Ward 3 for you at instant speed, and then if you pitched a blue to play it, it's going to come in and replace itself with a Spectral Shield, so you get to utilize that for your next turn. Waxing Spectre is also super great. It's a nice offensive instant aura where you get to play it. It already comes in with a +1 counter if you pitched a blue, so that allows you to, again, do that kind of 1 for 4 Go Again in the situation, but it's technically like 3 for 4 Go Again because you have to pitch 2 to play it. Then we look at our, let's just look at our Transcend cards real quick. We run 6 Transcend cards in here, 6 of them. And that's because we do want to have Chi. Chi is very important to the deck because it allows us to make spectral shields and allows our end game to kind of become more relevant. You can make a spectral shield on your opponent's turn, and then you can make a spectral shield on your turn. And so it blocks out a little bit there and really helps. But we have Drop in the Ocean, Homage to Ancestors, Pass Over, Preserve Tradition. We've got Rising Sun, Setting Moon, and then also Stir the Pot. So all of these here are great adds into the deck, and they help kind of, alleviate a lot of that, right? A Drop in the Ocean, you can make something have -1 power to save maybe some of your ward stuff. You've got a lot of these cards don't target attacks, which is really important. Like Drop in the Ocean doesn't target, is the only one that targets an attack, but all these other ones, they don't really have to have a very specific target. And because of that, they are able to transcend much easier into Chi. So that's nice to know. We are also running Big Blue Sky. This gets +1 for each blue card you've pitched this turn. So theoretically, this could come in to end your chain of defenses for a whopping 4. Usually 4 is like the number you want to get to, because again, 0 for 4 defense reaction is incredibly powerful. So you want that to happen. Essence of Ancestry Mind, very good into certain situations as far as its actual potential, right? Essence of Ancestry Mind, it blocks for 3 normally. It also is a 0 cost that has Ward 2. Unfortunately, it's not an instant, so you don't get to utilize it to the best of its ability, but it also does, if it's the last thing to leave your board and you have no other Illusionist auras on the board, this will block out a blue source that attacks next turn. So, or the next attack that's blue. So if your opponent's going to come in with a very powerful blue card like Macho Grande or something of the sort, you can always go ahead and utilize the power of Ancestry Mind to prevent all of that damage, which is very powerful. Then we look at our next card, Second Tenet of Chi Wind. You are going to be transcending a lot in this deck, so therefore having something like this, being able to attack with it for 5, pitching a blue, and then playing a transcend card, transcending to give it go again, then you have 5 into a spectral shield for 2 or another aura that you might want to bring out. Very, very powerful. And it blocks for 3. That's what we like. This card I'm still not entirely sure on, but I've seen it have a decent amount of play, which is Spectral Prowler. Spectral Prowler is a card from Dynasty. It says that if you have a Spectral Shield, this gets go again. And it has Phantasm. Now, a 2-power card with Phantasm is both good and bad in some way, right? First off, it blocks for 3. That's very good. But if it's got Phantasm, it ends your chain entirely. So you're not really going to get a lot of value if you are playing against a Guardian or you're playing against a Brute or something, because they can just go ahead and block this out with a Popper, and then they end your turn. But they also technically will overblock it in a way, and it doesn't really matter at that point. Like, you only have 2 of these in the deck. They're usually probably going to be saving them for these Phantasmal Hazes anyway. So Spectral Power is not bad, and it's a blue. So theoretically, you can respond with a Transcend and be able to do some other stuff on top of it too. And then, of course, we talked about the Unmovable, and then the Vengeful Apparition. This allows some of our auras that cost 0. If, when this leaves the arena, if you control no other Illusionist auras, you can play your next 0-cost aura as though it were an instant, and if you do, it enters the arena with a +1 counter. Now, the only one that we have in here is actually Haze Bending, a card that we didn't end up going over. I just skipped over it entirely. Haze Bending is our only 0-cost aura in this deck, and it's really powerful strictly because if any of your other Illusionist auras, such as Waning Vengeance, Waxing Spectre, any of these things with Ward, Haze Shelter, all of those, if they get destroyed, Haze Bending will make a Spectral Shield for you, which is very good. So I like that a lot. We are then running, of course, the very nice, prevent arcane damage sideboard. So that is available for people who are looking to go against Wizards or Icelander, Icelander's a Wizard. Wizards, you only need to sub in one of these things for Rune Blades. So not too terrible, but you always got to keep an Arcane Barrier package on you because you never know when you're going to come across somebody who's going to rock you with Arcane. So that's the list. let's get quickly into a match of mine where I'll show off kind of the power of this deck and show how it functions and how to best utilize it during certain matchups. All right, let's get right on into the media player here. Let's go over this match that I had against a new. So very, very exciting. I was curious to see what the matchup was going to be like because new gets to kind of steal my blues and do some stuff there. But in most cases, she doesn't get to attack with them. She just gets to simply use them as ward. So if they're instants, you just get to play a bunch of ward instants. But it's not really the end of the world for me. I do have some obviously very powerful things like haze bendings and so on and so forth, but we're going to go ahead and start it off just by coming in for a whopping 8. Now, I don't know too many news that run poppers, and I thought about putting a few in my deck, and I believe I have, because poppers are just kind of important in most cases, especially if you want to run things like Blanche or anything of the sort, but didn't have a popper here, just blocked out a little bit there, and then came in for 2, and now I have a pretty stoked hand here. We're hoping that new doesn't come in and try to do some crazy attack reaction shenanigans, because honestly, this hand I have is just not super great. It is strictly a, stir the pot into a couple things. I'm trying to block out as much as possible. This astral etching isn't going to do anything for me because I don't have a spectral shield, so I don't end up actually getting any kind of value from that. So I end up just taking simply a Spider's Bite here, so not the end of the world. And then I look to see what my opponent's going to be doing. In most cases, if you're playing a little bit more of a fatigue strategy, you might be able to go and play the dagger into something. But in this situation, they're going to come in with a Wither, and Wither is going to kind of be the play for them. I'm assuming they're going to have some kind of way to buff myself up. Wither gives a frailty token, which does actually affect my weapon attacks. So it is not going to be the best feeling for me to have this happen, but it is what it is, right? Can't really blame them. So we're going to block out 4 here in the hopes that if they do have an attack react, which they do, that it still blocks it out. So they're going to have to use additional resources to get over our defenses. But we've got Red Hiss coming in. That's going to go ahead and give them a Slither as well. There's the Grains. So Grain tips the scale. Let's go ahead and give it +1. So now it's coming in for 5. I'm thinking about possibly popping my ward, because if I get any of these guys up, I can just do that. So there's that ward, or essentially the prevent 1 from the Kikoi. And so that's going to go ahead and block out anything from that. In this situation, I definitely wish I had blocked with the Bastion and then done a little bit of extra stuff there, but it ended up working out pretty well. They ended up being able to transcend with that, and now they're looking at the top of my deck. I believe they do get, they banish a Passover, one of my Chi cards, but luckily that's something they don't want to use, because if new uses your transcend cards from your banish zone, you end up getting the Chi when it transcends. So keep that in mind. Transcend cards in the banish zone, while not super great for you, is much better than an attack action. So now my turn's pretty simple. I can play Vengeful, and then I can go ahead and stir the pot, get myself a Spectral Shield in the situation, and then next turn I can always go ahead and get a Astral Etchings in my arsenal to work for me, because I wanted to be able to give those +1 counters to a Spectral Shield that I have. So quickly, it's just a nice little card of shuffle. So we shuffle, we get an Inner Chi, and then we go ahead and we play our Vengeful Apparition. Again, we don't have any instant, we don't have any auras in our hand right now that are 0 cost. So it leaving the battlefield isn't the worst thing, but I do want to make sure to kind of up my board presence here. And now that I have Ward 2, it's totally perfect. I can go ahead and then just pass that on over, and now I have 2 additional block to my hand. Here we end up pulling the Sink Below. So Sink Below being very, very good into this hero because of all the attack reactions. But I'm not too sure if I really care too much at this very moment to super sink. They are playing kind of more of a contract build when it comes to this new. So they're using some contract cards on top of Some other things, I'm wondering if they're playing Cash In. Cash In is a nice card to run if you're able to make currency in the game. But 5 coming in, I can block out 2 of it with my ward and just block with a card, keep my arsenal. I then can also make a Spectral Shield with the Spectral Manifestations and be able to give it +1 from the Astral Etchings and still be able to attack with it. So I'm still not sure if that's like the best move here, where I end up blocking with both. They are going to go ahead and give it go again. I didn't want to block with D-React just yet, I believe, because, you know, I don't really care that much about it. And I'm trying to preserve my board just even a little bit. So they come in 4-5 with go again. I'm trying to figure out what card they can possibly get in next. I'm expecting something like a Double Trouble or something absolutely terrifying to like bump up my stuff, but they just come in with a Beckoning Mistblade. Now, I like this, but I also don't, because I'm trying to not get rid of my stuff. Beckoning Mistblade is simply just a comfy one that I don't want to block with the card with from hand, but if it hits, I lose one of my ward. So it's okay though. We've got ward available. Our whole point is to take some damage. Even if we have to lose some ward, the ward is there to protect our life. So if we have to take some damage, it's not the end of the world. All we get to do here is just make sure to properly get rid of some stuff. So they get to come in with that. Then they're going to probably more than likely Spider's Bite just to get rid of that other one. Yep, so Spider's Bite to get rid of the other ward. Clear off the ward on my board. But I still have a pretty decent hand coming in. And I'm not sure if they have anything absolutely insane on their turn outside of an Annihilate the Armed. So I very much like the position I'm in. I'm at 19, they're at 18, and I still have a decent amount of armor. They haven't used their armor yet though either. So still very early in the game to determine what it is that we want to do. But they just end on Spider's Bite. They end up keeping an arsenal. They end on the Spider's Bite. And so I get to go ahead and utilize my wonderful ability to just play a very, very simple Vengeful Apparition like I did previously, because I want the deck to be consistent. I want there to be value on board almost all the time, especially if it means that it's something to soak up those dagger hits. And blue ward cards end up only just soaking up 1, which is great. So ends up working out in our favor. We're going to go ahead and we're going to try some stuff out here. Play that Vengeful Apparition, and we're going to keep the Sink Below in hand. We're going to kind of IP ourselves here because we don't have any action points and we have no way to really give anything go again as of this very moment. So we end up just holding off and waiting for the next one. Now, this hand also not super great. The Unmovable is pretty much unusable here, but we get to block out their Spider's Bite. See, in this situation, I may have attacked with a Beckoning Mistblade first, simply because having Spider's Bite, you know, it could very well have saved you some time there. But they're going to come in with a Battlefront Bastion. Now this is a lot. This is for 7, but I have no more ward to protect on my board, so I don't really care so much to protect as much as that. I can go ahead and utilize my Sink Below here, and I can look to sink a card, or maybe not, but we get to have a pretty nice turn here with a blue Unmovable to activate a lot of our stuff. This is a very powerful turn on our end. We play Spectral Manifestations because we don't have an aura. We end up getting +3 counters on this Spectral Shield. And then with our 1 float, we can go ahead and play the Astral Etchings in my arsenal to then go ahead and give it another +3 on top of it. So this will come in for a whopping 7, and that is a lot to come in. 0 cost, 7 go again is what this card becomes. It becomes a 0 cost, 7 attack, go again card. Now it only wards 1, so obviously one of those daggers next turn could very well clear it, but if I end up having the right resources in my next hand, I can just protect it and continuously come in for 7 for 0 every single turn. And we call that value, baby. That's what we're talking about. So they're going to get their block value out of their armor. and utilize the most of it that they can. Luckily, you know, leaking 1 damage through, not the end of the world. We're still pretty close in life total, so there isn't a big like discrepancy in life. I then get to just arsenal this Waning Vengeance and move on to our next turn. Now, 2 Haze Bendings. 2 Haze Bendings in this turn, in this hand. I'm definitely not looking to play probably any of them, unless I have the opening, but we're going to try and block out as much as we possibly can here, because our opponent is gonna probably look to go tall. So we go ahead and block out here. We don't want this Spider's Bite hitting. Worst case scenario, what I thought about doing was possibly popping a ward cloaked armor. And if I did that, I could go ahead and block out one of those daggers, but didn't end up doing it. This little Desires of Flesh is coming in here now, and I'm really, really curious whether or not I should block. I end up because I have 2 attack actions in my hand, and the attack actions are what's going to activate Desires of Flesh. So they're going to be able to gain life off this because they are going to be able to banish it. They also banished a second Chi of Wind, which, if you don't recall, is a awesome 5-power blue card that they can utilize later in the game. What they do here is they end up playing the Razor's Edge for 0. I'm then able to pitch a blue to play my Waning Vengeance red. They play a Rousing Wave to give it a Fang Strike. So now this is going to come in for 7, and I'm currently blocking a whopping... I mean, technically on the board, I'm blocking 7, but I don't want to lose my Spectral Shield. So what I have to do in this situation is get another piece of ward available to me, and that is where I can utilize something like my ward armor that I have here. So I can just go ahead and pitch that last blue in my hand, since the Spectral Shield is going to cost me nothing to attack with. I'm going to go ahead and utilize that float I have, give my Spectral Shield a +1 counter, and then I'll use everything besides the Spectral Shield to block out the damage, and then they gain a life, and I get to go ahead and come in with a whopping 2 Spectral Shields to attack with, which I'm very, very happy about. So Spectral Shield's coming in for a Gruul 8 go again for no resources. Casual, right? This is just how this game plays now. So with this in mind, if New is probably looking to do some damage, Pick to Pieces is probably a really, really good play. But you don't always, I don't think you're going to main ward Pick to Pieces strictly because you have the thought of possibly running into a Enigma. So I don't know if it's a main board total. You have a lot more sides for sideboard stuff in Classic Constructed, so it's okay to add that in there. But for this, it might not be that much. Now, here I'm trying to figure out if I want to come in for 1 or if I want to come in for 2. 2 isn't bad. They don't seem to be running a ton of poppers, so I could come in for 2 go again and then just do nothing. But I think I'm just going to keep it safe, keep cards in my deck, and I'm just going to go ahead and pitch an attack for 1 with this Spectral Shield. So 1 damage, not the end of the world. They're going to probably take it because they don't want to overblock and they want to keep that card in hand. Now they're going to come in with a Impulsive Desire. Now, Impulsive Desire, they don't have any blues. They have nothing else in hand. The only thing that could be in arsenal is a D-React or another Razor's Edge. So what we're going to do here, instead of directly blocking, is we're going to play a Haze Bending from our hand, pitching a blue, and it's going to ward 4 of that. So now we don't lose anything in this regard, and I get to keep 2 cards in hand. So very, very powerful, and I get to just continue to do whatever I want. My board's starting to slowly but surely grow, and that's the way I want to see it. I want this to kind of continue to get more and more things with ward on the board, and my opponent's going to try and go tall to clear out a lot of this ward, but the more ward I end up getting, the better off I become. And with the Haze Shelter and a Rising Sun Setting Moon, I'm not going to get to go ahead and make any super big plays, but what I get to do here is come in for 8 and then come in for 4. And we like those numbers. A good old 2-card 12 value, right? Value. We call that value where we're from. So this comes in for 8. Our opponent's not looking to take 8, even though it's 17 life if you're trying to crack back. and really clear out the Spectral Shield, I probably would have. But now looking at their hand, they only had attack actions. So they weren't going to get too much out of it outside of the fact that Beckoning Mistblade and Spider's Bite are cards, right? I personally feel that if you're not presenting a whole lot of damage, but the obvious threat is the Spectral Shield coming in for 8 damage every turn. And that's very, very terrifying. So you do not want to try your luck in a situation like that. You don't want to sit here and go, ooh, maybe I'll be able to do it, maybe I won't. In some cases, especially with a deck that gains life like New, you want to be able to, know when to push and know when to pull and get some life back. So whether or not it's worth it, I think the Spider, but I think the 2 daggers are actually some of the most powerful weapons into the Enigma format, or the Enigma matchup, I should say, strictly because you get to come in for 1, and nobody wants to block a card for 1. It's just awful. It feels bad, right? And you get to clear pieces of ward every single time when you come in because, granted, I get to choose and I get to make new things with ward and so on and so forth, but it is what it is. So they're going to come in with 3 with an Infect. Again, they have nothing. So I'm going to go ahead and just block it out with a nice Waning Vengeance, which is then going to get me a Spectral Shield on top of it because I pitched a blue. So this is just good use of your instants that come in. Again, Waning Vengeance being a very defensive illusionist aura. So could it have come in for 3 on my turn? Sure, but I'd rather it block out 3 damage and then give me a Spectral Shield than worry about anything else. So I'm very, very happy with it, and I'm hoping that the game ends up coming more in my favor. You see my board continuing to grow. I can now come in casually for, I can come in casually for a nice 12 damage on 1 resource. So not too terrible. So I've got 3 Spectral Shields, one of them with 7+1 counters. I had 2 floating resources at the end of their turn, and so I used those 2 floating to create a Waning Spectre or Waxing Spectre, so that way I can utilize that on my turn as well. Because I have a blue, all right? I have a blue in hand, so this turn can then come into a 8 attack, into a 4 attack, into a 4 attack. So now for a whopping 1 blue, I can present a cool, easy 16 damage for 1 blue. Constantly. And they're at 13. They're going to have to block a lot of this. I think this is just one of those situations where you have to look at it and you have to go, is this where I take a little bit and don't block with my whole hand? Or do I bother and do I just try to block out as much as I possibly can? I like to say that the daggers are probably your best option in this game because you get to pop ward pretty easy, but I am presenting a pretty disgusting board. So at the end of the day, it is what it is. But yeah, so now you get to come in with a Haze Shelter for 4. So Haze Shelter for 4. They only have 1 life left, and they could have blocked, right? They could block here. They do. They block with the Battlefront Bastion. And I'm like, okay, cool. Are they going to block with another card? Because they should block with 1 more card, but they end up just not blocking with anything at all. I take a quick look at their hand, and I see that they have a hiss, and a Infect. So they would have had to pretty much shove everything through to this, but they could have blocked out 4 and then come in with, dagger, something, or even dagger, Infect, hiss, and then kept the Slither, right? That would have been something. And I'm not sure if that would have been the greatest move, but it ended up being enough to the point where I was like, I'm not sure why they didn't block with the rest of this, but it is what it is. So that is our deck tech for Enigma. Now, I personally think I'm a really bad Enigma player, so do not take anything I say with a grain of salt. Please make sure to go ahead and check this deck out for yourself. You can find a link to it in the description down below. Thank you, Tie-Dye from our Discord server, for letting me use your list and kind of check it out and see what it's all about. And hopefully, if you guys have any different changes or texts you'd like to make, let me know in the comments down below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's wonderful MST Clash deck tech for Enigma, the Mystic Illusionist. This does cover now all of our MST specific heroes in the Clash format. So if you missed New and Zen, please make sure to go ahead and check those out on my channel. They should be most recent uploads for you guys here, so feel free to check them out. Look at the strategy, and hopefully it helps you continue to learn your fun play style here in the Clash format. You can also go ahead and like the video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and if you want to support the channel in a more monetary sense, you can always become a channel member. Channel members do get a wonderful opportunity to get member-only videos, as well as emotes and loyalty badges for when I am live, so you can go ahead and flex those to people in the live stream chat whenever I am live. So thank you all so much for watching. I do appreciate your support a lot, and I hope you continue to have fun in the flesh and blood. And I will see you all very soon. Nerd out.